Hi, Jesse again, reporting from my garage, and this is where I did the final assembly here for this media cabinet behind me. Now, if you watch some of my previous videos, you will have seen some of the elements that I put into this, including dowels, how I glued up some of these pieces, and how I applied the tung oil finish to this entire console. Now, today I'm just going to review a few things that I came across that I thought might be important should you want to make a piece of furniture of your own. The number one call out that I would probably make is that if you're going to be buying this lumber directly from a mill, you want to make sure that it's going to be lumber that you can accommodate. Now, in this particular piece, I have a 16-inch depth. I only have a 13-inch planer. So I can only accommodate up to 13 inches, which is clearly not enough for this. So I had to make those pieces now down to the thickness that I want and also accommodate the width. So in choosing some of the pieces from the lumber yard, I chose pieces somewhere between 8 to 9 inches wide, and that allowed me to then rip off the ends and actually square up the pieces that I was going to use in making this assembly. The entire cabinet, everything that's on the outside and inside, they're all glued together as well as held together with dowels that I chose intermittent spacing to keep them nice and tight together while also adding a massive amount of structure to this particular piece. The other element that I wanted to call out is that if you're going to be using something like a tracksaw, for which I actually tried to apply this in this piece, the tracksaw also has to make sure that it's running in a very square fashion. So I ran into some elements here that I had to then work around, particularly around the glue lines that I have here. And so in this process, I actually learned a little bit of how I can actually help myself in these particular instances to maybe hide some of those glue lines a little bit better. And the best method that I actually found was to take the actual wood glue that you would use for the doweling or for the joining of the boards and mixing in all of the dust fibers that I had generated when I was sanding this piece down. And in that process, I have now the exact same color and fine material so that when I mix that together in the glue, almost like a putty, I can then fill those lines, and then with the application of tung oil or stain or paint for that matter, it will hide those glue lines a lot better. So in this particular piece, I did actually learn to do that in a way that I found actually very efficient. It is a bit tedious though when it comes down to it. The second thing is how I hold this piece together. Now, there is not a single screw in this entire cabinet except for the attachment of the legs. So I chose dowels in this entire piece, and in some of these areas I have through dowels, so they are exposed on the ends and on the tops of some of these boards. But in this particular section here where I have the added structure at the top and at the back, I actually have half blind dowels. And so those only go about halfway into this wood but do not protrude out the outside. And that provides an immense amount of strength and support for this. This piece is 5 feet long and 24 inches wide. So if this was about half the width, I probably wouldn't need this top support. But because of the length that I have, I really do need to add in some structural support so that over time, this will not sag and it will not move. And on the ends of this piece, I also have through dowels that allow this to attach to both the ends. So now I have nearly 100% contact from both the top, the sides, and the dowels on every corner. Then right here into the middle, these are supported by through dowels. So this piece actually supports this lower piece, which then in turn is supported by this center support structure. So this piece is now 100% sound. And I feel very comfortable giving this to a customer and hopefully it lasting for many, many generations. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about was a little bit about how I have this Backerboard assembled onto the back of the media cabinet, as well as a small little design element that I made, which is just a cutout and a hinge so that the customer could then put their console on top of this and then allow access for the cables that will go out the back of the cabinet. And that will also allow it to then sit flush up against the wall. The last piece on this that I just wanted to touch on was the tung oil application. So this piece is now sat for just over 2 weeks now, and it's getting pretty dry, but I can still tell that it still needs time to cure. And really kind of in medium temperatures here, 40, 50 degrees, it's going to take at least a month. But after about 2 weeks, a majority of the oil that had not saturated through the wood at this point would have already showed. So I'm not really too worried about anything further happening here. It's potentially gonna sweat maybe a little bit if I was to bring it out in the sun. But other than that, the curing phase is still going on right now. And really the best way to tell is that if you were to rub your fingers along this, you can actually see my fingers get slightly oily. And that means that the oil has still not dried. So during this process, I can get it to my client. They can still put it into use, but it's light use. It's basically just putting it into position, maybe putting some of the things that they have on this, and then allowing those next couple of weeks to go by. And as far as maintenance, this thing will last a lifetime. This beautiful matte finish that is on here, it will stay waterproof, which is really the most important thing. And all you have to do is that maybe once or twice every couple of years, you take some of that tung oil and you rub it over the piece and you wipe it off immediately. It really is a very low maintenance follow-up when it comes to taking care of this piece. And then the last thing I wanted to review in terms of the assembly on the cabinet was how I actually put it together. I did not make a video because it was quite lengthy, but you always might be wondering, how do you clamp things together? And I actually found these pretty cheap from Temu. These are the Jorgensen Cabinet Master clamps. These are 36 inches long, and quite honestly, because I had to buy some of these, so many of these, I actually bought 6 of these, and they were about the cheapest that I could find, but also they were very efficient because they accommodated the width of this cabinet, and that was really, really important for me. So if you're looking for something a little bit on the cheap, that's probably something you can go for. Again, I'm not sponsored by them, it's just something that I used in the assembly. But when you're making through dowels like this on this cabinet, you really want to try to get things as square and as tight as possible, because as you sand and as you make adjustments, these things kind of shrink a little bit and they also move a little bit. So you really want to have as many clamps when you're doing the doweling to really make sure that you're getting everything square and compact as possible. So that's a little bit about the cabinet. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel. I have a lot more content that I'm going to be doing. And in preparation for that, I'm also going to share that this shaker style stool that I had built for my daughter, I'm actually going to be reviewing how I do that process. And I'm actually going to be using maple instead of this red oak that I use for this. But in that detail will also include how I do the dovetails as well as through dowels to assemble these step stools. So please continue to follow along. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy.